Hi, this is Joe with Hi-Fi Corner, and we have a great deal for you guys through the festive season. If you order a 1200 or 1210 GR2 or a 1300G from us, we're going to throw in a free Audiophile 2M bronze. If you go up to the 1200 or 1210G, we will throw in a free Audiophile 2M black for you. That's a great deal here from Hi-Fi Corner. I'm Joe, and remember, always enjoy your music. Technics 1300, you guys, we've already had this out of the box, but I just wanted to show you Technics innovative all cardboard packaging. So they give you a nice diagram up here. So if you need to ever repack it, if something goes a fault, which is extremely rare with Technics turntables. So you're going to pull this first bit out here, which is going to be the lid. I'm going to just set that aside. Also inside the lid, you're going to also find the cover for the slip mat for the platter. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the accessories box right here. So in here, you'll have your cabling that you find. Then you'll also have your accessory box, which has all the little accessories that you'll need. It'll have your 45 adapter, has your extra counterweight, has your overhang. It also has your head shell as well, and everything else you kind of need. The counterweight is also in here, but I have that already attached to the turntable because I had it set up before. I'll just put that back in there and kind of set that aside. This one is just empty, this side. And then I'm going to take these guys out. Again, just extra packaging to keep the turntable safe during transportation. And then the main turntable itself right here. So I'm just gonna unpack that so you guys can see. Now you can see that I'm not leaning on the legs too much. I'm just kind of lifting it slightly as I pull this off. And the reason being is you don't want to damage the silicone that is in the legs that are in these adjustable feet here, because that will inevitably damage the dampening. And that's one of the key features of the Technics, to keep it vibration out of the turntable. So let's just see that. You can just see how I'm lifting up. Now, Technics have developed in this box, I'm not going to do it because I have to take it all apart, but they have developed a nice kind of mech with the packaging, to where you can set the turntable on it so it sits like that, so you can get the cabling in the back. But what I generally do is I'm just gonna take this that I had, so that's the cover. I'm just gonna scoot this over. I'm keeping it level. I'm just doing that. And then I put it on its side like that. I will put the cabling in here. I'll do my attachment, and I'll put my lead in there before I set up anything else. Okay, so that's just the way I do it. You're not going to damage anything. Just make sure your tone arm's locked, that it's not going to go flying out anyway. And you can see I'm not putting any stress on the legs here as well. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of scoot that off, put that on there like that, and then underneath that is just another bit of packaging for the platter. Now the platter will have, and really I should have my rubber gloves on, but I'm just gonna hold it because I don't like to get fingerprints on the brass. And then it just goes on, and in the manual you'll see exactly how to use the washers and the bolts that secure this platter. This is a good shot of underneath. You can see it says balanced. And you can see that they've taken out a bit of this right here to balance it. You can see they've shaved off a little bit. That is not imperfection. That is actually them balancing this platter perfectly. You may not be able to catch that on the camera though. So I'm just going to set that back in there, guys, for the purpose of this unboxing portion of the video. Now we'll cut to the review, guys. Thanks. Hi, and welcome to Hi-Fi Corner's YouTube channel. I'm Joe, and today I'm going to be doing a review of Technics' new SL-1300G turntable that we have here. Before I get into that, let's talk a little bit about how the review went and what kind of system I was playing it in and what I compared it to. I used a Luxman 507Z as an integrated amplifier feeding into a pair of Wharfedale Dovedale speakers connected via Chord Signature speaker cables. I used a quad QC24P as my phono stage connected with Chord Signature into the Luxman 507. The comparative turntable that I used, it was the 1210 GR2. So their latest iteration of the GR range. And the cartridge that I used was the same exact cartridge for both turntables. Luckily for Technics, it's easy enough when you're doing a comparative or a review between two turntables that have detachable head shells. You can set the tone arm up for each, and considering that it was for both Technics, the overhang was perfect, so there wasn't much to have to deal with besides taking the head shell off and putting it on the other turntable. So I used their stock cables that come with the 1300. I'll get to that in a little bit. We'll talk about the cabling and stuff like that. Going back to the cartridge was the Dynavector 10X5 high output cartridge. Let's get into some of the details and then I'll get into the review of the turntable itself. So what you're seeing here is a really kind of, as we already know out there, the 1300's been out there. Technics did their own videos. There's other people who have broken it down on YouTube. This is really about a review, so I'm not going to get too much into the crazy details about it. But what you have really is kind of the platform of the GR2, so the 1200 or the 1210 GR2. And what I mean by that is it has a very kind of comparable base here. So what you have here is a top plate that's cast aluminum. There's some really good breakdowns of this turntable on YouTube already, and you can see kind of the underbelly. We don't recommend, nor do the people who do those videos recommend, that the end user ever do that because there's a lot going on in these turntables. There's a lot of technology that Technics implements to ensure that very, 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 very minimal wow and flutter, that startup speed, the kind of performance that we would expect from a Technics turntable. There's reinforcements because of the motor compared to the GR2 within the top plate. The tone arm itself is, from what I could tell, is the same exact as the GR2. Everything from the lift lower mechanism to the arm tube to the bearing, I couldn't really assess anything different other than that. What they do is they take away all of the functions of a DJ turntable. So this is really geared up, as we already know, towards kind of a hi-fi hobbyist, kind of like myself. I don't know, I'm on the fence between it, to be honest with you, because when I think of Technics, I think of all the nice little controls, the blue lights, the strobe, so on and so forth, being able to fade in and out if I want to. Not that I'd ever probably use that, to be very honest, but this is a very nice, clean, aesthetically looking turntable, and the performance really comes from this whole section right here. They have incorporated their silent power PSU. They've incorporated all the other technologies that you find in the GR2 and some that have trickled down from the 1200G. When I say this is where kind of the moneymaker is in this turntable, that's where it is. It's in the platter itself, which I'll get to in a second, and the motor. The motor is the same with some tweaks, improvement tweaks of the 1200G. It's been a bit refined, it's been strengthened, so you get that very nice motor, very smooth. If I just do that, you can see it's very butter when you, the bearing in it, well, the motor and everything in it, it just operates extremely smooth, very silent, especially now that they've incorporated that new power supply that we saw in the GR2. It's brilliant in that sense. And then what they've done is, besides taking away, I'm gonna just stop that there. Of course, as you can see, we no longer have the strobe indications on the side of the platter that you find in the 1200G, but the platter itself, as far as I can tell, it is almost identical to the 1200G, and so it's a 3-layer platter. So what you have is you have the rubber So that's helping dampen the vibration. Then you have that cast aluminum platter, the outer platter that we see here, which makes the main structure of the platter. And then they've taken that brass top plate that you found in the 1200G and put that on there. And so what does that equate to? Let's get to the review between the GR2 and the 1300G. So what I noticed right away was how good the GR2 is. For the cost of it is really beyond what I would expect from a, what is it, 1,800 pound, 1,900 pound turntable. I was kind of taken back and I was just like, I can't believe how good this is. How is the 1300 going to improve on that for the extra, what is it, extra 1,000 pounds or whatever it is for the 1300? And what you get with the 1300 though is something veering much more closer to the 1200G. Now the 1200G doesn't have the new power supply, so when they finally do incorporate that in there, of course the 1300 is going to sit even more comfortably between the GR2 and the 1200G. It's one of those things that we'll see that later on at some point. I'm sure Technics has an idea of when they want to release that for the 1200G, but right now, for those hi-fi hobbyists like myself and that don't want or need the fades or the lights on it and are really just looking for a high performing turntable at a very good price, the 1300 comes in. So between the GR2 and the 1300, what I noticed really was, and I do believe it is a product of the motor and of the platter itself in comparative to the GR2, and that is what you get is you get a much cleaner sounding performance. So when you're listening to a passage or a particular song and you hear all these things going on, what the 1300 does in comparative to the GR2, everything's a bit cleaner around the edges. It's not all muddy. It's not that the GR2 muddies it together. It's very good performance for the price, like I said, but the 1300 just makes it a little bit more crisp. What that does in relation then, it allows you to see further into the sound stage. So all of a sudden you're able to look further into the sound stage. You're able to see much more clearly where each performer is performing, what instruments they're playing, and how those, like the timbre, the accuracy of the timbre of each instrument is much more pronounced on the 1300. Again, simply because it's gaining more detail. It's kind of a cleaner presentation. That also helps increase the dynamic range. How would you say that increases the dynamic range? Because when you have those swings in the dynamics, because it's a cleaner presentation and it's drawing out more detail out of the grooves of the record, you'll hear those much more present instead of it being all muddied together, if that makes sense. It's never easy to kind of describe this until you actually listen to it. It gives you a better overall picture of the performance in which you're listening to. And that's, of course, what we're always kind of gearing towards. We're always trying to hear these minute details within the grooves that have been captured in the recording. And this helps retrieve more on a scale that is equivalent to its price point and well beyond. So you have other turntable companies out there that do it in a completely different way. Everybody who's ever watched any of my videos knows that I'm a massive fan of direct drive. So I'm a bit biased when it comes to the Technics turntables, but it really was a surprise to hear that. I didn't think I would hear it so vividly between the GR2 and the 1300. I could not really fault this turntable at its price point. The performance, which I think is well beyond its price point, and the quality of performance that it does. It's one of those things that is honestly, I could happily live with this turntable in one of my systems at home. I think that speaks head and heels over anything when someone who has access to all this kit could come around and say, yeah, I could live with that. So for its price point, you guys, I can highly recommend this. I think that Technics has done a really good, no one was expecting this to come out. They really kept a wrap on it. And I think Technics have done a really good job at hitting a price point that was kind of a gray area in turntables. You kind of went from a few grand all the way up to $5 or $6 grand, or you went up to the about 4.5 now, which is the 1200G, without kind of anything in between. And this really kind of hit that point. And I highly recommend you guys come and have a listen to this and see what performance. We've already done very well with it here in the shop. All of our customers who have heard it have either bought it or are planning on buying it. Some things that I think that I would improve upon, and this goes for most Technics turntables. I would be looking at maybe, I think the head shell is very adequate for cartridges up to about 1,000 pounds or so. Anything over that, I would probably start experimenting with new head shells. Another thing that I would like to see improve even from Technics itself is just the cabling that they provide with this is almost a 3,000 pound turntable. And I would like to see a bit better interconnect come with it. But then again, saying that, we all kind of have our own favorite cabling. I know I do. I have probably 3 or 4 interconnects sitting in my drawers at home that I would happily put onto this Technics without even thinking about it. And I know that would boost that performance to a much higher level. Again, for the review purposes though, I did use their standard one that comes with it, but I did experiment afterwards, not doing a comparative listen, and improving the cabling does vastly help the performance of the turntable. Thanks for watching, guys. My name is Joe from Hi-Fi Corner, and remember, always enjoy your music.